to The Book of Life, a show about Jewish books, music, film, and web. I'm Heidi Estrin. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library at Congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida. Additional support comes from the Association of Jewish Libraries. Among Micol Ostow's teen romantic comedies are a few books that explore her own Jewish background. First came Emily Goldberg Learns to Salsa. Now we've got So Punk Rock and Other Ways to Disappoint Your Mother, a graphic novel hybrid co-created with Micol's brother David. Appropriately for a book about a garage band, I met up with Micol in a noisy bar in Manhattan, so please consider the background buzz to be atmosphere. Visit bookoflifepodcast.com to see a book trailer for So Punk Rock and for links to Micol's and David's websites.
So Micol, I wanted to ask you about So Punk Rock.
It is the story of 16-year-old Ari Abramson, who goes to a Jewish day school, much like the day school that I went to. And he's having a little bit of adolescent ennui, and he thinks that the way to sort of snap himself up to the next level of cool would be to start a garage band. So he recruits three of the most unlikely bandmates that he could possibly find. His best friend, who's like alpha dog, Jonas, takes himself way too seriously. The most religious kid in school, Yossi Gluck, who happens to also be the only kid in school who has a set of drums. And Yossi's younger sister, Rena, who sings in the Gittleman Phonica Choir. We've been calling it the VH1 Behind the Music story of the most epic Jewish rock band that never was. And how it came about was that my brother and I had gone to a panel on graphic novels just for fun. We had a friend who was speaking on the panel. And a couple days later, he emailed me and said, we should do a graphic novel together. He's trained as an architect, but he loves to draw, and he's been drawing his whole life. And I said, I don't think that I can do that because the format is really so different than a traditional book, but I think that doing something that was a hybrid would be definitely feasible, but I'm really busy, so you're going to have to come up with the idea yourself. And a few days later, he had this idea of a teenager who was sort of looking for his niche and decided to start a band. We pitched it to my agent, and she liked it. I guess it just all grew out of there.
So was your brother in a band when he was younger?
The details are hazy because I was much more interested in myself back then. But he had a band for a couple of months when he was a sophomore, and they did not have nearly the success that the Tribe, which is Ari's band, has. So I think he was kind of drawing from his own experience of feeling like the only person who understood him was Kurt Cobain. But
in reading this book, I felt like the characters really grew, and it had a message to it that was very strong in its Jewish values, in addition to just being fun and connecting with that target audience of teenagers. But at the same time, the one thing that worries me about how adult readers might react is that there's strong language.
Yeah.
Which in my advanced review copy was done with like stars and asterisks and so it wasn't actually spelling out those words, but you knew what the words were.
Right.
I know that some people will say, oh, well, I can't put that in my library or whatever because of that. But so I want you to justify and explain why it was important to include that.
I think that if you're writing to teens, it's important not to dumb things down and to really approach them on their own level. And we did grapple with how much profanity we wanted to include, and there's actually a rhyme and a reason to it. When one of the characters is quote-unquote cursing, he has the asterisks and things like that because he's the one I said takes himself too seriously. So sort of the irony behind, like, he thinks he's such a badass, but he's not actually even cursing. The only two times in the book that we actually use curse words were two really, really emotional moments where I think Ari really wanted to say something very specific about his state of mind.
So you felt that it was integral to the way those characters would be in real life?
I do, and honestly, the book is really clean, and if you compare it to a lot of YA that's written for the same age level, when people have asked me, is it appropriate for my 13-year-old, because, they play a gig at a bar mitzvah, so a lot of people have mentioned, we'll give it out to bar mitzvah kids, and I say, there is some drinking, there are sexual situations, some light profanity. I wouldn't want parents and teachers to go into that situation blind,
right?
But I also don't think that
it's not going to traumatize any kids.
In my opinion, yeah.
Right. It's going to traumatize more parents than kids.
They should hope their kids are that well behaved.
When I started the book, I thought, okay, this is just sort of a fun romp through teenagerhood, but then it seemed to have a lot more substance than I was expecting. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm flattered to hear you say that. I mean, the project was really meaningful to us. I think for me, my mother converted to Judaism, and I grew up, I went to Psalm Injector from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, pretending I hated it, like, every step of the way, and some years we were kosher, and some years we weren't, and I think my parents were sort of grappling with how religious they wanted to be. My grandfather was the head of the pastoral psychiatry department at the Jewish Theological Seminary, so we had, on the one hand, my mom's family where we were celebrating Christmas, and on my dad's side, some pretty heavy hitters, and I think we just really felt, my brother and I, our own senses of our Jewish identities were really constantly evolving, and it's been interesting to me in the time that I've been a writer. There was Emily Goldberg, and now there's this book, and I thought that it wasn't, quote-unquote important to me, that, I had grown up so Jewish that it was just there, and I didn't have to think about it anymore, when obviously I can't stop thinking about it, so that's been a real surprise to me, and it's been really fun to kind of use Ari to help me process my own process. As far as his journey, I think he starts out in that way that every adolescent starts out, just not really sure who he or she is, Jewish or not, which is why I don't necessarily think it's even a niche book in that regard. And he sort of wants to be cool with a capital C, and, being religious is not cool. To me, he's the litmus test, like he's the middle ground, and then Jonas is the one who has this really inflated sense of self and not very much by way of moral value, and Yossi, who's the person who starts out sort of the joke, is the one who, believe it or not, is the most confident and the most secure in who he is, and that kind of turns Ari around as far as, like, you're allowed to make your own decisions and you're allowed to define what's cool for you. And so I think the decision that he comes to is the same decision that my brother and I came to, which is that, like, it is a part of us, it will always be a part of us. You can make fun of it and you can be ironic about it, but at the end of the day, it really is what binds us together with all the people that we love, so.
Very cool. Talk about the illustrations, because you call it a hybrid graphic novel. So how important, they're not just decorative illustrations, they are part of the storytelling.
It actually made sense for Ari to be secretly an artist. It just made so much sense in terms of his character and the story and the format.
So the illustrations are not just for the benefit of us readers, they're actually part of the character's personality. He's the one providing these illustrations.
Yeah. When we started feeding each other material, I found, like, for me especially, I had such a stronger sense of who Ari was from seeing the drawings. And it's, honestly, I adore my brother and he's brilliant, but I was blown away. I mean, some of the jokes in there, I just couldn't believe it, and it really pushed me to constantly sort of think outside of my own comfort zone and really try and embrace what Ari's mind frame would be.
Mm-hmm. You said there's a website in development for So Punk Rock. Besides just, obviously promoting the book, because it's music related, is that going to be part of the website, or any interesting interactive components?
Yeah, you can get there through MicolOstow.com, or you can go straight to kosherpunkrock.com. It's going to have a trailer, it's going to have an iTunes playlist, it's going to have an excerpt from the book and sample illustrations. Rena and Ari both have Twitter feeds. You can link to the Tribe, the band's MySpace page. You can link to the Facebook fan page as soon as that's up. So it's an opportunity for readers to get more interactive with it, and hopefully if we start getting some reviews, we'll put those up too. So how much fun it is to be able to take your characters to a different place and interact with your readers through an entirely different medium. So we have Ari's Twitter is up now. Rena's is NJ Choir Girl. It's GRRL, like Riot Girl.
Yeah.
I can't remember Ari's name. When my brother gets here, he'll tell you. But anyway, they're up there now. They haven't tweeted that often yet because it's only been about a week, but they'll start.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
There are so many ways to connect with the Book of Life. Fan us at facebook.com/Book of Life Podcast. Follow us at twitter.com/Book of Life Pod. Email us at boooflifepodcast@gmail.com and listen to the latest episode by phone at 916-313-3820. And of course, find links to everything at bookoflifepodcast.com. The Book of Life is a podcast service of the Feldman Library, a congregation B'nai Israel in Boca Raton, Florida, at cbiboca.org, and is supported in part by the Association of Jewish Libraries at jewishlibraries.org. Our background music is provided by the Freilachmakers Klezmer String Band at freilachmakers.com. Thanks for listening, and happy reading!